hello everybody. No microphones, so I'm going to try and yell at you for the next 20 minutes. Yeah, this is just a talk on distributed validators, what they are, how to run one. My name is Max Sharewood, so I'm a content and communications manager at Obol. On the side, I run H2O Nodes, which is a validator company that I co-founded 2 years ago. So I'm just going to talk about what is distributed validator technology, give some examples of distributed validators in the wild. We're going to talk about the impact of DVs on Ethereum and how to get involved. But first, I want to know a bit about you guys. So I know this is probably one of the most technical Meetup audiences that exists. So who's running a validator or an Ethereum node today? Oh, only one guy, okay. All right, that's good. What is a DV? What is a distributed validator? So first, let's talk about kind of Ethereum staking today. So if you're a solo staker, you need 32 ETH. You're probably going to run one machine either at home or in a data center. Yeah, you're probably going to look like this, obviously. If you're a professional node operator, typically you'll run maybe up to 1,000 validators per machine, and you'll have many machines. So if you have 5,000 validators you're running, maybe you'll have 5 machines plus 2 or 3 backups. And Florian will tell you a bit more about how they do things after my talk. And if you're a liquid staking protocol, an LSP, you're probably manually onboarding node operators and not requiring them to give a bond or maybe giving a little bit of a bond, and you're giving them the validator keys. So that's kind of where we're at today. It's all about keys on machines. So the problems, key management is pretty risky. So even for the pros, we've seen slashing take place at Bitcoin Suisse, at Rock Logic, at launch nodes. The latter two were Lido node operators, or are Lido node operators, and those were Lido keys that got slashed. Infstones, another Lido node operator, they had to rotate their entire set of keys. So basically they had to shut down all their validators and start new ones because they thought they might have compromised those keys. And this quote here at the bottom is what everybody says if you're getting ready to run validators. They say, you should risk downtime. You shouldn't try to build any backup systems because the risk is that, let's say your primary goes down, you move the key to the secondary is running, that's fine. You've avoided downtime. Maybe you were only down for 5 minutes, but now your primary comes back up again. Obviously you didn't have control over the reason that it went down, so maybe you don't have control over the fact that it's coming back up. Now you're running the same key in 2 places, and you're at a very high risk of getting slashed because you're double signing, you're testing twice, all those things you should not be doing. So pretty much everyone just says the downtime the downtime penalties aren't that bad, so just be down. And don't try and build something more complicated. And this is true for the pros as well. I mean, Florian will tell you more, but this is pretty much how it works today, right? So why do we have downtime? Maybe your internet service provider has a problem if you're running from home. Actually, today I had a couple small outages, which was annoying. Or your data center might go down. There might be different reasons for that. It's not supposed to happen, but it can happen, and it does happen. You might have a problem with your machine, so you might fill up a disk, something like that. The chain's growing all the time. If you're not monitoring your disk, the disk might get full, and then you go down. Or there might be an Ethereum upgrade. Let's say you forgot to upgrade your node, and there was a big upgrade, a big fork that went through, and now you have problems. Or there could be a bug with one of the clients that you're running, right? So there's a lot of reasons why things might not stay online 24/7. And even the pros struggle with this. So if you go on the Lido forums and you just Google incident, these come up. These are from recently until 3 years ago. So they've kind of always happened. These are the professional node operators, and these are just downtime incidents. And they're basically telling Lido, hey, look, we're sorry. Here's why we were down. Here's what we did about it to get back up online. And in most cases, they actually reimburse the Lido DAO for the amount of rewards that they missed and the amount of penalties that they accrued during that time. I don't think Lido makes people do that, but it's just kind of something that people started doing to be professional because obviously as a node operator, you're not supposed to have downtime. Everybody gets slashed sometimes. So this is from Rated. So this is entities with more than 5,000 validator keys that they're running. There's been 205 validators that have been slashed ever from entities like this. So these are the pros. And at the bottom, you've got solo stakers, and you've got 150 different validators that have been slashed by solo stakers. This is on rated.network. If you don't know it, it's a really cool website. So pretty much, whether you're a pro node operator or a solo staker, slashing risk is real, and people do get slashed. So this is where DVs come in, distributed validators. So think about like a multi-sig, right? Where you need, so a multi-sig is a wallet where you need multiple other wallets to sign off on transactions. It's just like that for a validator. So you're taking a validator key, you're distributing it to, in this case, as 4 key shards, and it's going onto 4 different nodes, and those 4 nodes are running one validator together in this example. So it's an Ethereum validator or validators run on multiple nodes. This is a big selling point here, is that it only requires a threshold of nodes to be online. So for example, if you've got 4 nodes running a validator and one goes offline, the validator stays online. So it actually only needs more than 2/3. So if you've got a 6-node distributed validator cluster, 2 nodes can go offline, the validator stays online. If you've got a 4-node, 1 can go offline, et cetera. And the nodes can be run by different parties, right? So if you're a professional business, you could run 4 or 6 or 10 nodes by yourself and do it by yourself. But if you're a solo staker, and you don't really want to make sure you're online all the time, maybe you want to go on vacations and not have to worry about being at home all the time to fix stuff, you get a couple friends together and you say, hey, let's run a cluster together. And then, if you go on vacation for 2 weeks and your node is down the whole time, it's fine as long as they're still online, right? I mentioned that we're dealing with key shares instead of entire keys. So whereas before, if you have your entire key running on 2 machines, that's how you get slashed. Right now, with the DV, you're only dealing with a key share. So if you put that key share somewhere else, it's less risky. Basically, the entire cluster would have to be running duplicated for slashing to happen. So it's a lot less risky on that front. So great success. Let's talk a bit more about the architecture of a node running DVs. So Karen is what Obel is calling the middleware client that they make. So it sits between the validator and the consensus client. So an Ethereum node runs on a execution, consensus, and validator client. And Karen is a middleware, so it actually just fits in between the consensus and the validator client. The other clients run like normal. There's a tiny bit more of hardware requirement, but it's very minimal. So pretty much it's a very small difference to a normal node setup. I know that this is a very technical meetup usually, so this is copied from our documentation where you can read more, but it's basically a Golang-based HTTP middleware. It's intercepting and proxying API traffic, blah, 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 blah. And it's communicating with the other Karen clients in the cluster. And the validator client doesn't even know that it's part of a distributed validator. It just thinks it's a normal validator. If you go on the Beacon Chain website and you click on a distributed validator, you wouldn't be able to tell it's a distributed validator. It looks exactly the same as a normal validator. And at the bottom, like I mentioned, or I haven't mentioned this actually, Karen does not have access to the private key. So the private key is still held with the validator client. So this is different to, for example, our biggest competitor, SSV. They built a DV solution that replaces the validator client. We haven't done that. So the validator client is still responsible for signing. It's still responsible for the key. So we're not handling those key shares. So if you take 4, for example, of those nodes, you create what's called a cluster. Like I mentioned before, professional node operators can run their own multi-node clusters, or for example, if you're a solo staker, let's say you don't want to put in 32 ETH for your own validator, you get 4 friends together, everybody pitches in 8 ETH, and you can also kind of bring down the requirement for the bond, and you can squad stake like that. So that's quite nice. So hopefully that made sense. I know that was pretty quick. We'll stop for questions in a bit. Does anyone have any immediate questions that wasn't clear? Okay. So let's talk about DVs in the wild. We're kind of in this mainnet beta phase right now. So there are community clusters going online on mainnet today. One of the first ones was run by Superfizz. He put out a call on Twitter and said basically like, who wants to be part of my cluster? Let's run one of these together. I think that was a 10-person cluster where they ran 3.2 ETH per person. So pretty nice. And yeah, that's live on mainnet today. Team staking is kind of an initiative that was started by Aragon. You might know them from kind of the DAO space. So they're going to get ready to run a DV with their employees, and everyone's going to pitch in a bit of ETH. Maybe they'll even start running some of the Aragon DAO treasury in the future. That's to be decided. That's their decision, not ours. But that's kind of cool, if you think about teams coming together and running Ethereum staking together. Or local communities, we have some initiatives going on in that space. EtherFi, which you know from kind of the restaking space, they had something called Operation Solo Staker, where they were basically letting anyone apply on the website, and they were taking people and putting them into DV clusters. They had solo stakers from 35 countries and 6 continents as part of this initiative. One of them was actually running in Kenya on a Starlink satellite connection, so obviously that's something where maybe you wouldn't feel comfortable doing it in a vanilla setup, but in a DV setup where the whole validator doesn't go down if you go offline, maybe you're willing to take that risk. And yeah, this did not have any bonding requirements, so you didn't need to bring your own ETH. They gave you the ETH. They obviously screened the applicants and stuff, so they had pretty high confidence in these people. And last but not least, Lido Simple DVT. So Lido has done a lot of testing of OBOL DVT and SSV DVT. This week, actually, they're finally launching the first cohort of distributed validators on mainnet. They're going to have about 140 new node operators when this is done, so they're going to like 4 times the size of their node operator set. They're only giving a little tiny bit of stake to this module for now. We'll see how it grows in the future. They're kind of getting comfortable with this on mainnet, but this is important because this is the first time that solo stakers or community stakers have been able to get stake from Lido and run as part of Lido, without being kind of handpicked by the curated set, which is the way that it's worked until now. So that's a pretty big deal for OBOL and a pretty big deal for Lido. Obviously, we know that Lido is a big part of Ethereum, so decentralizing Lido is good for Ethereum. So let's talk more about the impact of distributed validators on Ethereum. So yeah, Lido becoming permissionless slowly is probably the immediate thing we can point to and say distributed validators are helping to decentralize the largest liquid staking protocol on Ethereum. There's also new liquid staking protocols that are going to be competing with Lido that are built natively on distributed validator technology. So this is Diva staking or EtherFi, like I mentioned before. EtherFi is still kind of in an early stage where most of the stake is in a curated set that's similar to Lido, but they're going to start onboarding distributed validator clusters very soon. And like I mentioned before, if you're a solo staker, it reduces the barrier to entry where you don't need 32 ETH anymore. You can find people to share that 32 ETH bond with. So this is kind of one idea that I've been playing around with. I'll see how it goes over today, but basically like client diversity has been a big topic. I'm sure you've all heard about this idea that if the majority of Ethereum is running on one version of a client and there's a problem with that client, all those validators have a problem, so potentially all of Ethereum has a problem. There was an issue with Nethermind, I think a couple of weeks or months back. That didn't cause any kind of finality problems on the main chain. I think it did bring down about 1/5 of validators. Things get a bit spicy when 1/3 or more of validators go offline. But we have seen issues like that in the past where the chain has failed to come to finality. So client diversity is super important. And basically I'm making the case here that like if you imagine that, let's say we have 5 consensus clients, right, and 4 execution clients, the best case scenario is that stake is divided evenly amongst those, right? So what does that mean? If we have 5, that means 20% of stake is with each. If we have 4, that means 25% of stake is with each. And if you think about like the worst case scenario, which is that there's some kind of mass slashing event as a result of a bug on one of these clients, again, it's something that never should happen, but it's something that, Ethereum does have correlated penalties for slashing. So if you're getting slashed by yourself, you're going to lose 1 ETH per validator. But if you're getting slashed at the same time as a bunch of other people, you're going to lose a lot more than that. So if you're getting slashed at the same time as 25% of validators, you're going to lose 25 ETH per validator. And that's actually almost 20% of all staked ETH in that scenario. So that's pretty cataclysmic, right? If there's 20% of validators getting slashed, then there's 21 ETH per validator being lost, which is about 13% of staked ETH. So if you think about this being evenly distributed, it's still not really a solution in the doomsday scenario that we have like a correlated slashing event as a result of a bug in one of these clients. So pretty much, and this is from Liquid Collective's blog, but you can see it's pretty aggressive. So this is like 20% of the network getting slashed for more than 20 ETH per validator. So DVs can build in client diversity to a single validator, right? So you have, in this example, 4 nodes, each node running a unique set of clients. So if one of those nodes goes offline as a result of a bug in one of those clients, the validator does not go offline. So the validator is basically protected from issues with a single client if there is a degree of diversity built into that cluster. Same thing goes for geographic diversity, right? If you run all 4 of these nodes in the same data center, the data center goes offline, your validator goes offline. But if those are spread out across different data centers, you've also, or at different people's homes, you've kind of removed those single points of failure. So you can really build in client diversity and resilience into a single validator or a set of validators in a way that you haven't been able to do before. So if you imagine if the entire Ethereum network was run on distributed validators that were properly diversified within those clusters, then ideally, if there was an issue with a client, like no validators would go offline at all. So that's kind of why I'm arguing that DVT is the end game for client diversity. That's kind of my personal take that I'm playing with. So yeah, that's kind of an interesting one. Obviously, Karen, the middleware client, if everyone's running Karen and there's a problem with Karen, everyone has a problem. That's why actually this is the Nethermind logo here. So we're working with Nethermind already to build a second DV client implementation. Ideally, there's 4 or more. So yeah, DV client diversity coming soon, but right now it's just Karen. So hopefully that kind of got you a bit interested. Maybe you've thought in the past about running a validator, but you've realized that it's too much hassle, or you don't want to put 32 ETH into it. So maybe, hopefully I got you interested. How can you get involved? Just generally speaking, the steps to run a DV is you're going to find other people to run with. You're going to exchange addresses with them. You're going to select one person who's going to be responsible for creating kind of the cluster configuration. We have a repo with some Docker stuff in it where you can easily generate an ENR, so that's kind of the identity of your node, and you share that with the person that you said is going to create the cluster. So he gets the ENRs and the addresses from all the people in the cluster, and then he can use our launch pad to create the cluster configuration. He just pastes all the addresses in there. Everybody signs the cluster configuration, says they're happy with it. Everyone runs a DKG together. The DKG makes sure that the entire key never exists in one place. So you can take an existing validator and split the key, but you can also generate the key shares with the DKG so that the entire key actually never exists in one place. That's the safest way to do it. And then you sync your nodes, you deposit to the validator like normal, and you're up and running. I mentioned we do have a launch pad. It's actually built by the same guy that was helping to build the original staking launch pad, so that's pretty cool, Chris Battenfield. And yeah, it's pretty easy to use. So one more reason to get involved is we're starting to give away these things called Technique credentials. Basically, this is like saying that you've run as part of a DV, you've achieved good performance, and you can take that to Lido or other staking pools, or even other people that might be uncomfortable with running with you if they don't know you. And this is kind of a just being able to say, look, I've done this before, I know what I'm doing, I've achieved good performance on testnet or on mainnet, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's the talk. Hopefully I've left some time for questions. Thanks very much.
Yeah, how many of these nodes do you usually recommend running? It must be like something like you need 3 out of 5 or 3 out of 4, or like how does each week setting up?
Yeah, so the threshold is like more than 2/3 need to be online. So that makes it nice for clusters of 4, 7, and 10. You can run anywhere between like 3 and like, I don't know what the upper limit is. 3 we don't recommend. You can find it in our docs, like There are certain numbers that go well, but it could be any number between 3 and I don't know what the upper limit is. But yeah, I think we recommend like 4, 7, and 10. Yeah. Back there? Yeah.
So what's the benefit of running huge distributed clusters in comparison to, say, 5 nodes?
Yeah, I mean, huge clusters, like the more nodes there are, I guess the more like traffic there needs to be. So we've done testing at scale with like 3, 4, and 6 node clusters, and the 4 and the 6 node clusters do pretty well. We haven't done a lot of testing with bigger clusters, to be honest. I don't think you should go out and run like, 20 node clusters or something like that. So yeah, I think the sweet spot's somewhere between like 5 and 12 right now. But we need to do more testing. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Are you aware of any estimations, approximate probably, of the real number of validators? I mean, unique entities of validators.
That are running distributed validators, or?
Yeah, I mean, not the organization which runs like 500 validators, but the real number of entities.
In total on Ethereum, or the ones that are running? Oh yeah, that's hard to say. I think there's like 4,000 nodes on Ethereum. They're not all necessarily staked, so they're not all necessarily validators. There's like almost 1 million validators, but like you said, there could be people running like 10,000 validators. So it's kind of impossible to know like how many businesses or people are running validators on Ethereum. But it's probably less than 4,000 because that's the number of nodes. Yeah, good question though.
It's also totally a side question there, but what's like the percentage of revenue right now when you to run a staker?
In general, to be profitable on Ethereum, or?
No, just like not, well, I guess it will always be profitable, but I mean, what's the amount? Is it like, just if you stake 32 ETH, like what's the expected return rate there? Is it 10%, 5%, is it more?
Yeah, the APY on Ethereum right now is like 3.5% per year. If you're solo staking, you might only get like 1 to 3 block proposals per year. You can be lucky and get more than that and get more APY, or you can be unlucky and get less APY. Depends if you're running MEV-Boost or not. So it's good to be part of like a staking pool where you can like smooth out the block rewards. That is one problem with DVs, is like if everyone's putting in like less and less ETH per person, then they're earning less and less. So if you went out and bought like a $2,000 computer and you're only running staking on like we said earlier, like 3.2 ETH, then it's going to take longer to pay that off than if you were running like 32 ETH by yourself. So Lido is actually aware of this. Sorry if you have epilepsy right now. I don't know if I can zoom in here, but Lido is actually going to give give the people running on simple DVT 8% of the staking reward. So the way that they used to do it was they used to take 10% of the staking reward and split it 50-50 with the node operator. So now they're taking 10% and splitting it 80-20 with the node operator, because they are aware that like each validator is not being run by one person, but it's now being run by like 7 people. So they are trying to make it a bit more profitable, because yeah, if there's too many people running in a cluster, then obviously each person makes less money per validator, right?
I wanted to ask you, you probably know about what are the slashing events, like what's most commonly, because I mean, the return on ETH now is like below 4%. So if it's a big corporation who's running a lot of nodes, and for them, like how is, like, let's say a node goes down for a day, or they like double sign it, what would be kind of regular, like how much would be the slashing?
Yeah, so the slashing events in the past, they look bad, but like you said, these businesses are so big that it doesn't really impact their bottom line as long as it's not one of these correlated slashing events. So I think some of the ones that I gave examples of, they were like 20 validators got slashed for 1 ETH per validator. So it was like 20 ETH in total, which, is quite a lot of money for you or me. But if you're running like 5,000 validators, doesn't really make a big dent in your bottom line. The real problem is like everyone can always say like, oh, you're a business that got slashed, right? So it's probably like more impactful to your kind of reputation than it is to your actual revenue. But yeah, I mean, you can go on Rated and look at all the previous slashing events that have happened, which is kind of interesting. I don't know how much time we have here, but definitely like have a look at rated.network if you aren't aware of it, because it's pretty cool. So this is like slashings over time. So I guess this is a weekly? No, is this? It's always hard to tell. Yeah, this is monthly. So yeah, this month there's been 4 validators slashed. Last month there were 8, 106. So that was probably one of the big ones. But you can actually see. Okay, so Bitcoin Suisse was 99, Stake.us 91, launch nodes 20, Rock Logic 1. But these are usually like 1 ETH per validator getting slashed. So yeah, I mean, it would suck to get 99 ETH slashed. But if you're running like 15,000 validators, you probably make that much in.
Yeah, because that becomes kind of not very friendly for solo stakers. Because if you're running 32 and you get slashed, then like you can like probably any kind of slashing will kind of like make your revenue like go to negative.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, when you get slashed, like the validator is like forcibly exited, so you stop earning rewards. You have to go into the exit queue. So you're going to miss out on some period where you could have been earning rewards as well. So it's just a bad time. Would not recommend.
So apart from slashing, did you have any comparison between like running 4 or 6 different nodes, then going offline for, I don't know, a few hours, few days?
Yeah, so if you are going offline, like basically the way it works is you're losing money at roughly the same rate as you would have been making money. So let's say you're online for a week, then you're offline for a week. Now you're basically back to 0. So you have to be online for another week to get back to where you were before. So it's not that brutal. Like if you're online all year and then you're offline like a few days, it's not really going to make an impact in your bottom line, to be honest, which is why everybody says just be offline. Don't even try and build anything that's going to risk getting slashed, because that's way worse, right? Yeah, that's kind of the TLDR. But the next talk's also staking related, so I don't want to, there will be another chance for staking Q&A.
Yeah, so you mentioned one of the biggest hurdles for solo stakers or people who like to solo stake is the 32 ETH. But the other hurdle are the technical requirements and kind of fears around that. And do you see any future in which the technical requirements of the software stack is going to get a little more user-friendly in this DVT environment, perhaps? That
Yeah.
Less technical knowledge can engage.
Yeah, so I've lost my slides here, but the team staking thing that Aragon is doing is interesting because they're actually using DApp nodes. So they're just ordering these little Intel NUC PCs and sending them to all their employees, and then they're going to be using the OBOL package like in the DApp node store to run DVs. So they're not going to touch any CLI. They're just going to do everything in a UI. We'll see how it goes. Actually, it's happening next week. But yeah, I think we're slowly getting there. It's good if you kind of have someone looking over your shoulder that is a bit more technical. If you don't have any technical friends, like you might struggle even with some of these UI-based tools. Styrium is also quite good, but requires you to have a machine that you can like SSH into. So you probably need to know like how to make an account at a bare metal provider and do some basic stuff with IP addresses. If you can do CLI stuff at a basic level, you can probably use something like ETH Docker, which like installs all the clients and just gets them all running. You just do like Docker compose up basically and click enter a few times. So I'm kind of at that level where I'm like technical enough to like use ETH Docker and Styrium, and I kind of know what I'm doing. But if I had to set up like each client individually, it would probably take me like 2 days of like Googling. But yeah, we're getting there slowly, but it's still a little bit of a technical exercise. Yeah.
I guess in a couple of years it'll look different, and I guess the success of DVT is also going to depend on the usability.
Yeah. I mean, there's also like white label nodes, like all nodes, for example, is super popular. They'll kind of handle all this stuff other than just like the basics of getting the validator running. So there are kind of these halfway solutions, and yeah, our job should be to like make sure that DVs are integrated into those. Yeah. All right, I think I'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Cheers.